We just have to realize first that this is the case.
I realized that I really enjoy it. Well, before that, I did once flip a demo car onto its roof.
Nevertheless, I believe it has always been this way.
The company I worked for was proud that I had won, but I was no longer allowed to use it for that kind of thing.
By listening to your body and doing what it would like.
It really is my greatest achievement.
Today, my guest is an exceptional talent, a person who has often found herself at the limit. He was a race car driver, a pioneer of Frankfurt's nightlife. Together with partners, he has run about 120 restaurants and bars, more than 50 of them at the same time. He flew from club to club by helicopter through the night and maintained an exclusive lifestyle. He was a celebrity himself and, of course, always surrounded by all kinds of celebrities. In his clubs, Grace Jones, Stevie Wonder, Eros Ramazzotti, Boy George, Roger Moore, Niki Lauda, and so on, danced. Welcome, Gerd Schuler. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
The pleasure is mine.
That's already wonderful. Dear Gerd, it was the 28th of November 1978 and it was midnight. And that's when you, together with your partner Michael Bresinger, opened the Dorian Gray at Frankfurt Airport. Back then, it was a discotheque in the basement that was Terminal 1, specifically Terminal C, if I remember correctly. For the opening, you sent out a special printed edition of Oscar Wilde's novel, The Life of Dorian Gray.
The portrait.
Or the portrait, yes, the portrait, exactly.
That's the title.
Yes. Within a short time, the Gray became one of the hottest spots in Europe. There was a model for the Dorian Gray. That was Studio 54 in New York. And my question to you is, how was it? Did everything work out the way you imagined back then? So yes.
So it went pretty well, I have to say. As for Studio 54 as a role model, I think if we had used that as a model, the place would have been shut down again after 8 days. So Studio 54 was, of course, similar to us in many ways, but everything there was actually much more free. So there was entertainment there. There were no taboos. New York at that time was also, well, how should I put it? The laws were largely bypassed there. And what went on there, it sent chills down my spine when I was there. Of course, sometime before the opening of our business, I flew over there. And what I experienced there was quite an adventure. But it was exciting, and certainly in such a, how should I say, well-protected location like the airport, we wouldn't have been allowed to get away with as much as Studio 54 did. So even the drugs were sometimes consumed quite openly. So the first thing I experienced when I managed to get in, that was already quite an adventure. Yes. To, from the G scene, blew coke into each other's noses with a little glass tube so that the effect would kick in faster and stronger. Yeah, I mean, those are things that would have been unthinkable for us.
So that means that Dorian Gray somehow, what's it called, sex, drugs, rock and roll, there was only the rock and roll or the techno music. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the techno came later. Techno only came later. But when we started, of course, I don't want to say that I'm a specialist in drugs. I haven't tried enough for that, but a line of coke, yeah, that's pretty socially acceptable, right? I mean, I was once on the yacht of one of the biggest Europeans, an Italian. And outside the 3-mile zone, there was a silver container with little spoons, and everyone could take a sniff. and also my friends from the well, how should I say, from the jet set, who are also really well off, and so very successful, wealthy people. They like to take a little sniff there because cocaine was part of it. It belongs to the group of mind-expanding, not mind-altering drugs, meaning the kind you can still control. If you don't consume too much of it, like with alcohol. But, well, I don't want to give a lecture about drugs now because you've studied all that from what I've heard. That's why, yeah, I have to be a bit careful about what I say here, right?
And honestly, I really haven't had much to do with drugs myself. I mean, of course, I know a lot about them from my studies and also from my practice. But I already have a question for you. When you were out and about, did you ever try a line? Is that what it's called? Or did you ever take a little sniff? Or were you very reserved about it?
So, what I absolutely avoided, what I never would have touched, would have been a pill, right? I experienced terrible things and also lost a few friends, or rather, their health was ruined because of taking pills where you didn't know what was inside.
Nowadays, a lot has changed, but back then it was really the case that, yeah, about 80% of men went to clubs to meet women. And at the beginning of the 80s, a new era began at Dorian Gray. It was electronic music. You were the one who gave it a platform at the Dorian Gray.
Do you see it that way? Yes. We gave electronic music a platform, that's right. But I have to honestly admit, it wasn't really my thing from the beginning. And we had mainstream classical music, and when we opened Dorian Gray, I already had 10 years of experience with nightclubs and mostly oriented myself towards the audience. My personal taste wasn't that important because we wanted to be successful and we were mainstream. We once had a place in Mannheim called Colosseum where a lot of underground music was played. And so we had already worked across the whole range of sounds. And then, of course, as I said, first and foremost, to keep the clubs running. And then came the techno scene. And I mean, there was my partner who said, hey, there are two people who wanted to make us a proposal with electronic music. And then he also said to me, but don't be startled there a bit, because we were kind of, yeah, already. I'm not really a fancy guy, but we did make sure that everyone in the group looked kind of good. I'm also kind of a child of the post-war ruins, you know, so back then there were things that were important that hardly anyone thinks about today. And so I made sure that the businesses were run accordingly. And then came the techno scene. We listened to it and had this abandoned or something. We had a roller disco in. I once talked the airport management into giving me a piece of the parking lot road because it wasn't being used. And then we expanded Dorian Gray there and made a roller disco inside, and it turned out great. It was accepted, and then it kind of faded away again. And when the guys came with the suggestion for techno, we created the first techno seed in Frankfurt in this even more underground area, just like Dorian Gray already was. And I have to say, I couldn't really judge it, but the music then went on to become a huge success. And Frankfurt was, at least that's what the experts say, one of the leading cities worldwide in the techno scene for almost a decade.
Sven Veth was DJing. Yes.
Sven.
Yes, Sven. What do you associate with him?
Oh, Sven is a charming guy, and he just wrote a nice foreword for my book. I feel very honored by that, and I can pass the compliment right back to him. He's a great person. And yes, I even think he DJ'd for the first time at our club in Aschaffenburg during his civil service, before he then began his triumphant rise. And yes, so I'm a fan of his.
I can totally understand that because I also know Sven Väth personally, so it's nice that we both know him. On the 31st, December 31st, 2000. So after about 22 years, that's right, that's really a long time. That's when Dorian Gray was closed. Why?
Well, there was a fire in Düsseldorf. 16 people burned to death just because in a club or something. No, sorry, they didn't burn, they suffocated. Wow. And after that, Frankfurt Airport was upgraded for 1 billion Deutsche Marks back then with smoke vents that weren't there before. So if there had been smoke vents in Düsseldorf, those 16 people wouldn't have suffocated. So the entire Frankfurt airport was upgraded with these smoke vents. Like I said, I mean, the amount alone shows how much was needed. And that Dorian Gray would have cost 1.2 million, and then he asked us, do you want that? If not, we can terminate the lease. And then we said, that's too much for us, 1.2 million. And then the airport went down to 400, so we were supposed to pay 400, and we could have done that. But then one of my big mistakes in life is always taking the third step before the second one. I was already looking at other venues again, and we had so many new things and ideas and so on. And then I thought, well, Dorian Gray has gotten a bit old now too. Then I called my partner and said, in the office in Mannheim, I said, Michael, are we still making money with Dorian Gray? He said, yeah, I'll take a look at it a few days later. And he called me and said, it's just about breaking even. Then I said, come on, let's just close the place down. We've had our success and it's still running, but who knows how things will go on, so we closed it. That was a huge mistake, because in hindsight we realized that Grey had paid for my car and had paid for Michael's car, and we had decent salaries, which already had 4-digit leasing rates. That Gray paid my secretary, that Gray paid his secretary, that Gray paid off his house, that Gray paid off my house. So we always charged rent for offices there. So suddenly when the Gray was closed, we had 50 grand back then still in Deutsche Marks, extra to cover. That was a mistake, yes, but on the other hand, it became a legend because of it.
I think so too. So if it ends right at such a high point, yes, then maybe it wasn't a mistake after all. Yes.
All good.
Exactly.
All's well that ends well, you could say.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you were born with certain values, and you said that you also brought that into Gray's story. Did you have something specific in mind, or were you thinking of something in particular?
Well, I'm a post-war rubble child, a half orphan, and it's terrible. Not terrible, but I did grow up in relatively poor conditions. And there, I would say that shapes you a bit. It does. Those early years shape you a bit. If you then manage to suddenly belong to the establishment, and at some point you end up flying business class or first class. And when the money started coming in a bit more, but you still had a huge amount of respect. And it really did shape my life to a large extent. Yes, it did.
The respect.
Yes, basically those values that remained, yes, which don't play such a big role today. Well, today a lot of things are much more relaxed and are no longer wanted or lived like before. And that's where I'm still a bit old-fashioned. I'm just very cautious. I mean, I was in my mother's womb when she ran into the air raid shelter and when I was born. I think I wasn't even 10 years old yet, was I? I was already 10 years old and couldn't cross a bridge. Even though there was a railing, I couldn't do it without holding my mother's hand. That's why this. At some point, I had to free myself from this fear, and that's when I got into racing and flying helicopters and so on.
We'll get to that in a moment.
Those were all steps to get out of that situation, to stop being that little scared kid.
You left home when you were 15, is that right?
Yeah, back then it was common. You'd just go stand by the highway and start hitchhiking. Set off, and then I did an apprenticeship as a car mechanic, which was pretty fun, but it didn't really satisfy me. After that, I had to first... Back then, there was something called a match sack. It was this weird bag. You just pack everything into it, and then you'd stand by the highway, and it worked out great. A very inexpensive way to travel, which doesn't exist like that anymore. And then I went to Paris, where I stayed for 6 months.
And then there was the thing with racing, like when did that start? With the, yes.
Well, then when I was in Paris and came back, then I did a bit of odd jobs, and then I also sold cars as a car salesman. And then I once took a demo car to a driving skills event, like a slalom thing, and I immediately won everything there. And then I realized that I really enjoy it. Well, before that, I had already rolled a demo car onto its roof in traffic, but that was when I was driving too fast somewhere.
Were they your cars?
No, that was also it wasn't a demo car, it was a service car, so it wasn't quite as bad. They didn't throw me out right away, but it was still a bit embarrassing. And like I said, the company I worked for was proud that I had won, but I was forbidden from using it for such things in the future.
And how did things go on from there? So you actually started racing, right?
Yes, that's right. Back then, things were very different. You could still get started with a small car. I then bought a little NSU Prince, for which my mother, who worked as a clerk, we really didn't have any money. She co-signed for it. It cost 5,000 Deutschmarks. And that's where I drove my very first races. In hill climbs, but I have to say I always had people who supported me somehow, somewhere. I mean, except for my mother, of course, and I'm really glad about that, because she could be proud of me her whole life and my Waterloo. And whatever negative things there were, thankfully she didn't have to experience them anymore. But that was a matter close to my heart. She was always happy and proud of her only son, yes, because I was the man of the house. My father was killed in the war when I was 3 years old.
How long did you race?
I raced from the early 60s until 1973.
And why did you stop?
Well, at the end, I was still racing in a class that was the entry-level class for Formula One at the time, which was Super V. My friend Günther Schmidt, who owned the company ATS at the time, gave me a car with which I was suddenly able to race at the front in this Super V class. And then in one of my last races, with one of the most successful drivers, who unfortunately, after moving up to Formula One, was tragically killed in one of his first races, an Austrian, Helmut Koenig. I dueled with him in one of my last races, and that's when I decided to quit. That was at the Norris Ring. I had pole position there and was also in the lead. And there was still a few wet spots because it had rained earlier. and due to a bit of inattention, I spun out and helmet crashed into me, which probably cost him the European Championship. And it made me think, because the night before after practice, I drove to one of my places. Back then we had a nightclub in the Neckar Valley in Mosbach, and there was some trouble. And they looked at me desperately, so I got in the car, drove over there and stayed for a while, then drove back, and I probably wasn't as fit the next day as I should have been. And that really made me think. And back then I was already over 30 years old. Back then, keeping up with the front runners wasn't as much of a problem as it is today. But then I decided to go for the class. Business career, and not to pursue racing all the way to the maybe even bitter end. When it comes to bitterness, I do have experience, but thankfully mine had a happy ending. I already experienced that back in 1968 when I crashed in Monza and narrowly avoided paralysis with a double vertebral fracture. I was out of action for almost a year. That's why it was a good thing that I stopped.
So in the end, you were constantly making decisions for your life that always brought something new. And when I look at it like that, everything that came along was really super exciting again. And is it true that you once lived in a castle? Yes?
No, in a castle or at a palace.
Or something.
No, yeah. I just wanted to say that my credo is break up, make up. And taking the third step before the second, which I often did, that didn't turn out well in many things. But I'm also very happy that there was a time when I didn't follow this credo. And that's one of my greatest achievements, that my Tamara stayed with me. There, I really stayed consistent, and that's true. After everything I've done, I'm really happy that this woman is still with me today. And apart from that, I have often, yes, I would say left successful paths because I was just so attracted to new things. And now about living in a castle or a palace or whatever, it wasn't really a real palace. It's what is now the Kronenschlösschen in Hattenheim.
So a little palace.
I once bought it and, yes, started renovating it with a lot of love. And yes, we had a lot of fun. The models from New York flew in via Frankfurt. Well, back then there was also the Fur Fair. And a lot of famous people also stayed there. And yes. But at some point I thought, no, having a permanent place, that's not quite right yet, because by then we'd already had Dorian Gray for quite a while. And then we got Perkins Park in Stuttgart as well. And then came this huge challenge to run a very interesting venue in the billionaire's residence, Gstaad. And suddenly there was the Magic Castle. That's what I called the place back then. It wasn't so interesting anymore, and eventually I let it go.
I just have to ask you something about your wife now. You two are still together today. Yes.
So,
Wie lange?
1966 we got married, yes.
That's almost 60 years. Oh my, oh my. And your Tamara, you say she was the greatest happiness for you.
My age is amazing. There's no other way to put it. You met her. Yeah, that's unbelievable. So it's really my greatest achievement, and I've done a lot, but she's a Pisces, you know. The day after tomorrow, she'll turn 75 and such a little fish. Once you have that in your clothes, you can't get it out anymore, you know. It always sticks somewhere. But that's how Pisces are, you know. Honestly, I have to say, it's the greatest happiness of my life. And of course, today I'm lovingly cared for by two women. My little daughter has also come back to us after we introduced her to the most amazing bachelors in the world at our jet-set wedding. Prince Albert with the Grimaldis when we ate, but Gabby wasn't interested in that young man back then who had quite a few pimples. And at some point she brought along Tommy Steiner. I had to listen to his music every morning. My wife immediately showed solidarity and only played The Fisherman of St. Juan. And, the marriage didn't last that long. Then came the second one. After the first marriage cost 150,000 or 200,000 Deutschmarks, I don't remember exactly, we threw a huge party at Dorian Gray with the limos. We drove to the cathedral, to the Frankfurt cathedral. And then, when it was over after 2 years, I did make a subtle accusation. It was an expensive adventure, 2 years. And then the next time the call came, hello, Mom, hello, Dad. We even flew over Las Vegas and got married. It cost $17.25 back then. And that was the second marriage. That one didn't last very long either. And then there was a third, Leo Song, my daughter. There were also 2 wonderful grandchildren. That's the positive part. I love them both. Both of them are taller than me, almost 2 meters. That's the positive part. And if I see her today, as I said, we live almost next door to each other. If I accuse her today that we introduced her to the greatest men in the world, and then Labi responds, well, Dad, I haven't found anyone like you, you know.
That feels good, doesn't it? That feels good.
Yeah, it goes down smooth, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. Your Tamara has put up with a lot from you too, hasn't she?
I mean, I'm such a, how should I put it? I love charismatic people, and I've always tried to surround myself with charismatic people. And I've met a lot of them. I have 2 very close friends. For me, they are the most charismatic people. Charismatiker. Neither of them is particularly rich. So I've noticed that these people are very charismatic. They're not uptight and everything just comes to them. Usually they're not very wealthy either. But I certainly have a bit of charisma myself, but I've noticed that when you're in the wake of a truly charismatic person, everything is much easier. Yeah, everything just goes so smoothly. And that includes my Tamara. Yeah, I mean, we were at the wedding of Karl Lauterbach, not Karl Lauterbach, no. No, we mean the actor. Sorry, now I'm thinking of Lauterbach.
From that Lauter?
Heine, let's be precise. Heine, our friend Heine, got married. It was a wedding celebration. So after the ceremony, there was a meal in Munich. And we arrived a bit later because we were still, it was raining. We took a taxi to get there and everyone was already eating soup. And then we were taken to our seats. Then there was Werner Baldassarini, also a well-known man from the fashion world who also had his own label. And it still exists, Baldassarini. Back then he was probably the boss of Boss, so the boss of Hugo Boss. He stood up in the middle of that silence when everyone was eating their soup, walked over to Tamara and said, Tamara, when you come in, the sun rises. And that really captures her. That really is my Tamara, yes.
There were also moments in your life that weren't quite as successful. I'd like to refer to your health. Was there a turning point for you?
Yes, thank God there was. When I crashed so badly in Monza, I was lucky. I had a fan who usually went with me to the races in case something happened. I mean, back then it was just dangerous, yeah. I was a German hill climb champion and was also a kind of specialist for hill climb races. And there were always about 120 participants, and there were 6 races. So the season always had about 10 or 12 races. Those were the championship rounds. And there was one season, after 6 races, there was a fatality every time. Back then, and you already started thinking that, well, I always had good equipment, and I became a hill climber very quickly. Then the danger of dying, it wasn't as great anymore. But this Dr. Rodenfelder, unfortunately, he also passed away early. He was a fan of mine, and I was always with him, but he missed Monza once. When I crashed there and ended up in the hospital, and it was like 2 broken vertebrae. And well, they started working on me there, putting on casts and all that. But I was in contact with Eddie Rodenfelder by phone, and he pulled out all the stops. I mean, I had already earned some money. I was getting money from racing and had already started working in the restaurant business. And Eddie made sure that I was transported to Germany as quickly as possible to the University Hospital in Heidelberg to Professor Kodner. He threw his hands up over his head in shock. He said, look, the paralysis is, the danger is over, but you would have been crippled for life if you had stayed there any longer. They put my cast on completely wrong. Yeah, and that was a first experience. And what I also wanted to say is I had my first business on the 12th. I opened it on March 12, 1968, of course, with the corresponding debts. And on March 24, the accident in Monza happened. 12 days later, I crashed there. Yeah, that's also a funny story. And my wife then ran the place with the staff. And when I was fit again, there was so much money in the register that I immediately opened the 2nd and 3rd shop. So I actually never became a real innkeeper. I was always the entrepreneur, thank God, yeah. But now, to get back, I was then in Heidelberg, and Professor Cotter, he was then again, it was a pretty big effort. I was brought into a horizontal position like a little pig, tied up by my hands and feet. They pressed my back for so long until the vertebrae opened up. And then they put me in a cast, yes, and because of that I had to stay in the cast for a long time. And the cast was also renewed every 2 months or so because the muscles atrophied. And when the last cast was removed, then there was no muscle left, and the spine stood like a little tree in the wind. And I kept falling over and fainting. And then they took me back to the clinic again, and at that time I was with Professor Kommerell and Professor Schettler. They were the gastroenterologists. They were leading experts across Europe at the University Hospital. They treated me and diagnosed me, Crohn's disease, incurable. Dear Mr. Schuler, azulfidine, forte, cortisone, and so on and so on. Take them constantly. You can live to an old age, but no stress, no more work, nothing like that. So I was basically sent home, taken out of the system as an early retiree, as an invalid, as someone incurably ill. So, and then I said, Schuler, that can't be it. And then I went from pillar to post. I was with a doctor in London. I was with a doctor in Munich. And one day the pharmacist told me, when I was filling my little suitcase again with all that chemical stuff, he said he had a customer who needed the same medications. And he doesn't need them anymore. And then I asked rather heretically, did he die? Then he said, no, he found a real doctor. And now listen to this unbelievable story. The pharmacist tracked the man down. I talked to him on the phone and she told me, Dr. Weiss in Mannheim. I said, I'm in Mannheim, a Mannheim resident, flying to London. I'm in Munich. No one can help me. Supposedly there's someone in Mannheim who can help me. I talked to Dr. Weiss on the phone and he said, Schuler, aren't you the race car driver? You played in the sandbox with my son, so just come by sometime, right? I went by there. It was a longer process, the x-rays from Heidelberg and the new ones. And then he talked to my mother, and then there was a meeting that changed my life. He said, "Dear Mr. Schuler, your weak point is your intestines. You've literally eaten your gut into ruin over the past 30 years. And now eat for 2 years what I tell you, and you'll be healthy again." And that's exactly how it was. Absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. And afterwards, I also advised many people with Crohn's disease. The clinic put me in touch with them who had a similar fate to mine, but not all of them made it. Yeah, because it takes a lot of discipline. And yes, and that's how I became, and it's amazing, I was afterwards actually even fitter than I was before. Yeah, because this sick gut, which never made itself known. Yeah, that's just how the gut is. Yeah, it just, at some point I would have collapsed, dead, done, that's it, you know. And so because of that, I naturally became a bit of a health advocate and was able to help a lot of people who had a problem.
Yeah, today we know a lot about the gut and how important it is. So you were definitely in good hands back then, for sure. Take a look and see if you can do something with what's inside.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to, after my accident, I had to urinate, and since there was no blood, they took me with apparently they wanted to save on the helicopter costs. Because normally they would have taken me by helicopter. I wondered then, because the injury was severe, why not by helicopter? Yes, only if there's blood when urinating, then the kidneys are bruised or something, then it's an absolute emergency. Yes. So I had to go by ambulance. I was then driven through Monza and Milan. Yes, unbelievable.
Yes, exactly. That's the story behind it. That's how it is. Yes, we put it back in. Yes, like that. Huh? Huh.
Open it.
Mm-hmm. Huh?
Number 223.
Yes, I don't know.
When I had my biggest success, I had the number 6 on the car, on the race car, but 223, could that be?
That was once a number on your alpha. Exactly. Yes. There. Exactly. That's it. Yes. So, and we already talked about that briefly earlier.
We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. That's nice, right? Is that yes? Otto Walgers? Yes.
No, Oscar Wilde.
That's Oscar. That's Oscar Wilde. Oh, yes, nice. Oscar Oflahati, which was his real name. I'm a huge fan of well, I should have actually seen it, but of course I also like Otto Walgers. So I'm currently in the process. He has already agreed to write a foreword for my book, and but I still wanted to. I have to admit to my shame, I knew Oscar Wilde by name, but I also didn't really know what he actually did. And when we again, or no, let me put it differently. One of our interior designer, a former model, a gifted personality. She once told me, Gerd, if you ever open a nightclub, call it Dorian Gray. So I asked, why Dorian Gray? Yeah, Oscar Wilde. The one who wrote the novel Dorian Gray, he created this Dorian Gray who didn't age. Yeah, and this exhibitionism, this showing off in a club, that really fits with this Dorian Gray. And that's how it happened that then I read the book, and for the first invited guests, we had 2,500 books printed with a foreword from us. So in that sense, Oscar Wilde eventually made his way deep into my heart. And I really like his many sayings and quotes and words of wisdom. I always enjoy it when I see or read one of his sayings. Yeah.
That's why. So you can go ahead and put the box back in the wind. I think we've taken everything out. Yeah, good. I think you haven't missed much in your life. Is there anything you're still missing with us?
I have to think about that. Well, I already said the greatest success is that my wife stayed with me. What I might still be missing now, and of course, I'm also happy that I got to know you, is to live to a healthy 100 and otherwise. No, special wishes. Yes. Well, health, of course, for all my friends, for my family, and so on.
Yes. You were really, 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 really at the top once. I mean, I don't think it could have gone much higher. You probably knew everyone. Were you ever over the top, like for yourself? Did you notice that you were losing touch, or did you stay grounded?
Well, I think with everything I've experienced, and I mean, it is, of course, exciting when you're in Samadan, that's the airport in St. Moritz, standing next to Gunter Sachs and waiting for his jet. Those are, of course, great moments, but I would say no. So I've just stayed the man and the boy I once was. Well, I also don't think that people could say I suddenly got too full of myself. Yeah.
You were at the very top, but you also had a bit of a downfall. Can you talk about that? Would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, well, downfall. It's always just about the money.
Yeah, financially.
Well, I have to say I felt sorry, and I still feel sorry today that the money isn't as plentiful as it used to be. But the ones who suffer the most, of course, are the people around me. But I have to say, even in those moments when suddenly my fortune was gone, I was soft. Never, let's say, completely devastated or totally depressed, and because, as the saying goes, and the sun always rises again, right?
Yes, truly. What is it? What did you believe in that didn't turn out to be true? Did it have something to do with like a health technology or something?
I didn't understand what you mean.
You invested in a project and it wasn't successful.
So the reasons why I crashed financially are mainly because I always took the third step before the second. And of course, because of my experience, I kind of became a health evangelist. Because of that, I was primed to go several million into debt over an alternative health treatment. But that too was, well, how should I put it? Just chance again. I had back then I was a VIP and had my private banking advisor at Frankfurt Sparkasse, whom I met at the wrong moment. Yeah, because my daughter was pregnant and had something in her blood. That she had a cold or the flu or something. And she was supposed to take antibiotics. And that's what the doctor said, but it wouldn't be good for her to take antibiotics because she's pregnant. And then, of course, I started to worry. And just at that moment, I ran into a friend of mine who had two scientists with him from Uzbekistan at the largest solar power plant, or one of the largest solar power plants at the time, who were marketing a substance which was supposed to have a beneficial effect on the human immune system. Or they also successfully completed experiments there. And that was an irradiation with with a material that was apparently a byproduct of space travel, because the space shuttles, when they returned to Earth's atmosphere, they were treated with a material that prevented them from burning up. And this material was applied to lamps, and with that, the human body was irradiated. And that's exactly what they tried to market it. And these two scientists were trying to find a licensee for the Western European region. And I listened to it, but it wasn't about investment yet. It was just, why don't you try it on my daughter? And they irradiated my daughter, and the blood was clean. And that made me aware, but I still wasn't ready to invest. But then I thanked the gentleman and said, so how was it? There are two of you, and so on. And what do you want for it? Yeah, so we want 400,000 Deutsche Marks for the license and so on, and everything's fine. I didn't think much of it either. And then I happened to run into Mr. Pleuel, the private banking advisor at Frankfurt Sparkasse, and I told him about it. Mr. Schuler, my God, you should do it, right? 400,000, I said, but I don't actually have that in my account. Mr. Schuler, come by. Klaus Wächter, who was the CEO at the time, we'll talk about it. Okay, and just like that, Schuler was involved in the whole thing, right? And I burned a few million there with a lot of success, but without scientific recognition. And back then I had a company, two companies together with Professor Sohn, who at the time back then was just a junior clerk. He was a senior physician here. By now he has reached his peak. I think he's gone again now. But he was the top gynecologist in the country. I had two companies with him. We developed an ultrasound trainer together. Which I was then allowed to, at the X-ray, at the Radiologist Congress in Chicago, I was allowed to give a talk on vaginal sonography as a trained auto mechanic, which was pretty funny. So I had two companies with Christoph Sohn, and he also did another blood test. That I think cost several tens of thousands of euros. But he already had a research budget as a successful doctor. And he said to me, Gerd, the chances are 50-50, but you have to invest at least another 5 million. And then I threw it away, right? And at the same time, our hospitality empire had also grown too fast, too big, and it was already starting to falter a bit. And then, phew, at some point there was a crash. But what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, right? Yeah, okay.
That's definitely true. And the way you're sitting here, I think you're doing pretty well, I'd say. But there's still something else that I really want you to talk about. You are one of the few people who, during their lifetime, already had a museum open for them.
I don't know anything about that.
But I actually thought this this Museum of Modern Electronic Music.
So the moment, that has a lot of momentum. Interestingly, the two gentlemen who back then, who my partner introduced back then, also said with the remark, don't be startled when you see them. Yeah, because their clothes didn't really fit into Dorian Gray. Yeah, these two gentlemen opened the moment. Yeah, and there was already talk about me being involved, yeah. There was also talk about contributing exhibits, but I'm not that closely involved, you know.
But you are already featured in this museum. That's something special.
In the broadest sense, yes.
Okay. Is there anything in your life that you wish you had known earlier?
Oh, God, the list is long, yeah.
Oh, just start with maybe one thing or two.
No, I would say you just have to go through the experience. Yeah. So on the other hand, I don't know if I would have changed my life if I had known everything earlier. I don't know that because actually I'm a happy and content person.
What kind of car are you driving now?
Oh, yeah, that's one of the advantages in this whole mess that all the money was gone. I still have to work, but that also keeps you young. And as part of this work, I currently have an ID.5 available to me. What is that? That's a Volkswagen. Volkswagen fully electric, which for an old racer who also, I mean race car driver who also really liked shifting gears. Of course, in a way, that's not really a car anymore, but it drives and it gets me from A to B quite comfortably. And I'm not closed off to new technologies. Yeah, and on the side, I always have a vehicle, something to drive. One that is worth driving and also brings joy. And my friend Richard, who's also here right now, makes sure that I get behind the wheel from time to time. And every now and then I also get invitations to drive some of the race cars from back in the day. And I've also taken part in the Mille Miglia 4 times. And with 300 SLR, so with 300 SL Mercedes-Benz vehicles, and once even with a really old one. So I always have something fast to drive, you know, so that's never lacking.
You've talked a lot about your Tamara. The fact is, you two are growing older together. How does that feel for you? Do you talk about it? Is that something you talk about?
Yeah, well, we don't complain. That's really important. And we're both sure, there are situations, each of us has a low point now and then, and so on. Of course, that happens more often as you get older. Sure, sometimes you don't feel so good, but knock on wood, things have been okay so far. We're still doing pretty well so far. Yeah.
You said that you're always working. So does that mean you're working right now too?
So I have a very sensitive digestive system. It plays a big role in my life because like 2 days on the yacht with cigars and champagne, that's when my inner student already starts to complain. You've already had the experience that things haven't always gone well for you in your life, so take a little care of your health. Jump straight into the water now or fly back home. You know, I would say this music scene isn't really good for me. Yeah, because of course we still have the contacts, we're still in Kitzbühel and we're still with them. I wouldn't necessarily say crowned heads, but now and then also with prominent nobles. But that always has to do with a lot of eating, a lot of drinking, and that's not really my thing. Yeah, or let's say it's not really my thing anymore, you know?
So that means if that's not your thing and you always need something to do, there's probably already something you're working on right now. And you also brought that with you for me. Well, not for me, but you brought it here for this podcast.
Yeah, well,
there is. Yes, he's bringing it to us right now, or rather, he's bringing it to you. Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
So that's what Gerd is working on right now. So then open it up. When you've done a lot.
When you've done so much.
Yes.
Then at some point you feel the urge to document it. And when you don't have that much money anymore, you think, yeah, maybe you can really make money with it. And I do have a huge network. And whether that's how should I put it? So here in the immediate area, it's Mr. Unseld. And in the wider area, there are a few people whether that's Tenues or my wife is the godmother of Patty Melcher. They own the Kelter Publishing House. And of course, a very dear friend, Patricia Scholden, who is with one of my best friends, together with Uwe Brodbeck, to whom I owe my 4-time participation in the Mille Medemilia. Patricia Scholden is the owner of the Motor Presse Publishing House. So I would have enough opportunities to write a book with a publisher and publishing connections and so on. And I wasn't always so aware of it. I also didn't necessarily want to glorify myself on paper. So I was a bit undecided, and the book was supposed to come out for my 80th birthday. And in between, I also, because I didn't have the right lithographer, because I said, if it doesn't turn out the way I imagine, then I'll just throw it away. Then I won't do it at all. But now we're on the home stretch, and now 3 years after my 80th birthday, is it finally going to come out? And I'm actually determined, or I've decided to definitely make the book because of that. Because it also talks about a time, the 4 decades of the past millennium, the last 4 decades of the past millennium, with the attributes further, faster, better, higher, more. That time will never come again. And it's in this work. Yes, and that's why I am now, thanks to many friends who helped me also. Mr. Richard is here, and now I'm finally on the home stretch and sure that it will happen. No, we expect it in late April or early May. And it will certainly be one of the very special books that come onto the market, because there is no finished book to see. When it's ordered and paid for, it will be produced. It's not exactly cheap. And it's limited, signed, and personalized upon request. So if someone wants that, that's of course the main focus. Dorian Gray, if someone still wants to have their aunt, who used to go to Dorian Gray, included with a picture, that's also possible. We also do it for some companies, so we do it for them too. For good customers, we make branded editions and so on. So it's developing. I think it's going to be a really good story. And I hope that it will become the must-have of 2024. And as I said, not everyone came into our stores, and it's also not certain that everyone will get a book. No, so we do want to make a small, a little pre-selection.
So that means there's a limited edition of how many?
999.
999, and then that's it.
Then that's it, yes. Yes, and I hope. I once bought a Ferrari F40. I made a lot of money on that because it was a limited edition, yes. And I hope that the book, not for me, but for the person who owns it, that it will also become more valuable someday.
Yes, I can just say so. For those who are watching now, not just listening, you can see it's a heavy box, super stylish. And inside there's actually a biography of you, yes.
Is that a biography? Kind of, well, I can't even open it anymore. Yes. So, like this. This is the book. Everything is obviously empty. There it is. Yes, everything is empty. And it is, it was made by an artist who wanted to, the picture of Dorian Gray. Gray, he wanted to immortalize in this photo of me by taking one half of my face. Back then I was a bit younger, and I also, as you can see, looked better.
No way.
And one side he made one side old, because most people will know the story of Oscar Wilde. He always stayed young, and eventually age started to show. Yeah, and that's the work. One. No. I hope not. Last serve in my life. There's still a lot to do, but I'm really looking forward to it. No, and I hope that those who have the work will really enjoy it, as something special. Yeah.
You said that you got to the goal. When will this work be finished?
So we have a deadline at the end of April. Mm-hmm.
And who can order it?
All right. Well, first of all, I have a little over 30 most beautiful favorite places of my life. There's a dummy there and also a small folder where you can see how to order it. And yeah, you just have to do some serious Googling, then you'll come across it somewhere. So at least you can ask if you can get one.
Dear Gerd, thank you so much for being here today. I wish you lots and lots of success with this project, that the 999 copies sell out quickly, but that's what you want as well. And I'm curious to see what comes next. You too?
Dear Petra, thank you for saying that so nicely. And yes, you are also always full of surprises. Well, but I mean, I have to say, really hats off to what you do, and that really plays into my hands. I do read one of your works from time to time, and yes, I do. Maybe we're thinking about doing something together, right?
Well, who knows, right? Who knows? And in this context, there's something really special here in this podcast. There's the role swap. Gerd, do you have any question or maybe two for me that I might be able to answer, might be able to?
A role swap?
Exactly. Now you're the one who gets to ask questions.
Oh, so that's the role swap. Yeah, so now I'm not Petra Pracht, but I'm asking Petra Das Pracht.
Good question, yes.
So a question that you could answer for me. God, a lot comes to mind. Of course, I'm now trying to find something that fits, something where everyone listening can have a bit of fun with it. And yeah, I mean, the most important question, how do I make it to 100? 101? 100.
In one sentence about that. Yes, by listening to your body and doing what it would like. And well, I firmly believe that we all carry an inner doctor within us, one who really just wants us to feel good. And when we do things that aren't good for us, then this inner doctor speaks up and lets us know. With illnesses, with discomfort, or with pain. And if we listen to that and don't ignore it and don't just take something so you don't feel it, but really listen to what it wants, then we have a really good chance of living past 100. Well, we already know that aging research, longevity research, is currently ranked very, very high among all the research studies at universities in this regard. It already says that we can actually live to be 115 or even 120, but we definitely have to do something for that, that's for sure. But I think you're on the right track, aren't you?
Sure. Can I ask something else? Yes.
Of course.
Because how can we prevent things from being constantly glorified in the media? I mean, sure, the advertising, the business, that's difficult. But I just read another article about sugar in Focus magazine. I mean, we know sugar is the scourge of humanity. And who is ever going to put a stop to these things?
It's a perfect opportunity for me, really, because I wrote a book that's coming out on March 27th, or will have come out by then. And it's about sugar, exactly this topic, Blutzucker runter, Gesundheit rauf. And you want to know how this knowledge reaches people out there. By us, you and me, and everyone who has understood it, being able to answer whenever they are asked, ideally. Because sugar and all the diseases that come after it actually have so much to do with us. I say that diabetes and everything that comes with it is almost 100% self-made. That means we can do a lot about it. We just have to realize that this is the case. And once we have this knowledge, no one can unsettle us anymore. Then we know exactly what to do.
Well, a long time ago when I was feeling really bad, I read the book. I don't know if it's available in German now. It was called Sugar Blue. That was an absolute standard work back then, and but no one learned from it. And it's just that the lobbies are too powerful, and they are the children already from a young age. They already suffer harm. Sugar is truly a scourge of humanity.
Things take time, and I know I've been working as a doctor for a long time, over 40 years. That's a long time, and I can just say I saw a lot quite early on. For whatever reason I was able to, but I saw a lot, I talked about it a lot, and I always thought, my goodness, why does no one understand this? I can only say the difference between back then and now is so significant. There is so much knowledge now, and there is also so much knowledge that is being shared with the outside world. Yes, there really is a chance that this very topic that touches you so deeply is finally getting widespread attention, and that all the people are becoming aware of it. For example, in my book, I actually wrote in the foreword that I wish this knowledge, and I only needed 60 pages to put it all together in this book, and the rest are just really, really beautiful recipes. That this knowledge would be taught in schools, because when children have this knowledge, it's always there. They always carry it with them. And even if they don't use it for themselves, by the time they have children, this knowledge will come back to them. And I believe then there is a really good chance that also, yes, this, I already call it a pandemic disease. In some way, it's simply that it no longer controls the life of humanity.
So humanity is ruled by completely different things. How is it possible that a pharmaceutical company, Sackler, poisons an entire nation with a painkiller that shortens life expectancy when taken, and it's simply prescribed by doctors in America because there's a commission? Yes, things happen in the world. Well, I mean, if you look at what's going on right now, then sometimes it makes sense to retreat into your shell and not participate so much in it. But this unprecedented story of an entire nation being poisoned by a pharmaceutical company that has since donated billions after the fact, and yet the stuff is still being prescribed.
I still believe it has always been this way. There has always been, at any time in the world, a lot of good and also a lot that was not good at all. I just think, or I hope, and it has been that way so far, that the good has always outweighed what wasn't so great. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here. And that's why I'm firmly convinced that if we have all this good knowledge and we live it and share it, things will keep moving forward, that the good will always remain stronger, and what isn't so great will eventually disappear. And I also think that the way things are right now, I still have hope that everything will get better. So I'm actually very optimistic about it, and I think we all should be, because then we have a chance.
Yes, of course. I mean, optimism, although with my limited knowledge, I'm far behind you, and I know that you follow the matter much more closely and have much more knowledge about it. You just have to look at it positively, because there are things that are just the way they are and we can't change them, and then we stick with it, and again the sun rises, and that's how it is. It keeps rising again and again. For that, we just have to do a little something, right?
Yes, and that was a wonderful closing statement, and I thank you. Thank you so much for being here today, dear Gerd, and hopefully we'll stay connected for many years to come. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, I thought so too.